Well, it was a good run. It was fun while it lasted. The regular season was a really great time, breaking records and going on a win streak and having all this really awesome stuff happen throughout the season. It was really fun being a Bucks fan from like late January till late March, I'd say. There was a couple of questionable things that happened, but at this point, if there isn't something drastically done to address the consistent errors of this organization, not basketball team, organization, from the front office, the executives, the coaching staff, and the players on the court. There is no reason a team of this caliber, with this level of talent, with this level of play, with these types of players, and the ability that these players have to produce a certain and specific type of brand of basketball on the court, should be losing in a series against someone who hasn't started all season and is now shooting the highest true shooting percentage of all eligible players in the playoffs. A guy who has barely been getting any playing time on a pretty good team that could use him and has suddenly unlocked his play from basically closer to a decade ago. And a guy who has refused to shoot the ball from deep and has looked inconsistent at the very least in terms of high effort in a very middle of the pack season with a bad offense, with bad 3-point shooting, and a dwindling middle of the road defense for the calendar season. The Milwaukee Bucks are going to be an embarrassing. They're going to be one of the biggest blemishes on Wisconsin sports history if they lose this series. They need to win 3 straight games, home, away, and home. 2 games at home if they want to win this series. What I'm going to say comes from the deepest respect and love for the game of basketball. This comes from the point of view of someone who has watched NBA basketball for a very long time in their young age at 23 years old, almost 24. As someone who's been a fan of this particular team for a decade in middle school, because I wasn't fortunate enough to always have access or the awareness or a stable living situation to watch NBA basketball. Sure, I got to go to some games as a kid. I got to see Kobe Bryant play. I got to see Dwayne Wade play. I got to see Shaq. I got to see Kevin Garnett. I got to see Kevin Garnett on both the Timberwolves and the Celtics. I got to see Paul Pierce, Ray Allen. Who else did I get to see when I was younger? Steve Nash, Mark Stoudemire, Grant Hill. All-time greats. I started to play basketball myself, and I understood what it took to be great because I realized I probably wasn't going to get there because I started too late. I was a fairly good track athlete in high school. Something that my coach in basketball would always say is, you're only as good as your next performance. And I think that's something that some of the Bucks players believe. Yeah, they might have won a championship. Yeah, they might have had 60-win regular seasons. They might have been 1 seeds a bunch of times. They might have produced MVP caliber seasons. They might have had all NBA type seasons, all defense, coach of the years. But what matters is that next game. And when I tell you, it is incredibly disappointing to go into a game knowing in your heart of hearts that the head coach of an excellent franchise is going to sit on his hands on a seat that's been on fire for 3 years. He staved off some of that heat with the championship, a bit of a fire extinguisher, if you will. And we can excuse an injury that might have altered a 7-game series last season. But this season, with a lot of health issues and a lot of inconsistent play, some perhaps unfortunate scheduling, they still found a way to claw themselves back to being the 1 seed, to give themselves home court advantage in the playoffs, and to be a good, competent, caliber team that has championship aspirations. It is incredibly infuriating to know that you have one of the best players to play the game of basketball, minimum top 25, and that's being really giving a lot of window for him to, not be in that top 15 kind of era. I think he could be top 20 easily. Third straight season being in the MVP conversation, 1, 2 prior to that. You have a player who's respected amongst the league as one of the best defenders, period. Best perimeter defender, overall defender, one-on-one defender in Jrue Holiday. You have one of the most widely recognized, underrated players in the league in Chris Middleton, who shoots the ball really well, incredibly efficient, has a really, really versatile offensive arsenal. You have one of the greatest stories in NBA history with a franchise leading scorer who was an offensive player through his entire life and then came to this team and changed his philosophy and has put himself as a runner-up in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation after a back surgery the season prior that held him out, except for all but 2 regular season games, and to have a good impact in the playoffs. Have a guy who was outcast and typecasted as a dirty, backstabbing, rude, irrational teammate in Bobby Portis, a emotional and uncooperative Jay Crowder, a dwindling health Joe Ingles, a dirty player with tons of history to back it up in Grayson Allen, a through and through role player who has never elevated himself other than one playoff run that, wouldn't you know, won us a championship, Pat Connaughton. The way that this team has competed has been absolutely abysmal. When I say abysmal, I mean absolutely abysmal. There is no reason under any circumstance that there should be this level of buffoonery, unserious, lack of respect that this team has had for itself in 3 of the 4 games of this series. You can make all the conversation you want about whether or not the charge call or the charge play or taking charges is fair, dangerous, dirty. Injury is injury, and it happens. It happens to every team. You can see it around the league this season. But when you have the best player in the world who has clearly demonstrated that when he plays, he is really damn good, and you dwindle away a lead in the 4th quarter because you refuse to deny the ball to someone who is very quickly inching up on 30 points, on 40 points, and what do you know? Ends up putting the 4th most points scored in an NBA playoff game in NBA history. When this team refuses to stop letting teams have career nights, breaking records for their franchises, and in the NBA for allowing a player who hasn't touched the starting lineup the entirety of the regular season to come in and shoot the lights out like it was 3 years ago when he earned an incredible contract for him and his family and has proven that he has not worth that contract until this series against your basketball team, against your franchise, that you go out of your way to sign a player who hasn't played basketball at a professional level for 9 to 10 months simply because he felt he should be starting over another player who gave a valiant effort against the MVP of the league in a situation in which he did not construct himself and Cam Johnson. The fact that you trade for a guy all of this draft equity to put yourself at a championship contender level team, and you win that championship. And to bolster that, what do? You bring in Grayson Allen, a historically known streaky shooter, dirty player who can't defend the wing. That's the person that you're going to start 75% of the games. Your best backup point guard shot chucks from 29 feet, 30 feet with an MVP on your team in transition who would lead the league in transition points per possession. but a pull-up three in transition is great. That's great coaching, right? Yeah, it might fall down sometimes. Yeah, he might shoot over 40% sometimes. That's great. That's great. But when you play against competent basketball teams, the Boston Celtics at home, and you almost lose to their third stringers, and then you get washed for nearly 50 points at home, you give up a 42-point quarter to the MVP and a former MVP who are playing on 3 hamstrings between the two of them. That's what you're going to do? This team is pathetic right now. It is absolutely abhorrent what they've produced on the basketball court. You're going to go 4 straight possessions, no passes, isolation ball with someone who's 7'1" being guarded by someone who's 6'4", 6'5". That's what you're going to do? You're going to go ISO on a guy who's 6'10", who has a 7+ wingspan on you, Jrue Holiday? You're going to take a step back three-pointer with 17 seconds left on the shot clock? You're not going to box out one of the most athletic players in the NBA who can go and grab an offensive rebound in Jimmy Butler? You're not going to relax and slow down and let yourself get stripped by a 37-year-old Kyle Lowry? That's the kind of basketball that we play? That's the brand of Bucks basketball that we play? That's what you tell yourself in that timeout when you're giving up a 17-3 run? Absolutely pathetic. This team is absolutely pathetic, and they're playing like it. Fire Coach Budenholzer, who refuses to stop letting Eric Spoelstra outcoach him. Trade Jrue Holiday. Get as much value as you can out of him. I do not want to see him in a Bucks jersey ever again after this series. After they lose, inevitably, guess where? Probably in Game 6. Bucks in 6, right? Yeah, right. It's cooked. This team needs major overhaul this offseason, and if they don't get it, I don't know if Giannis is going to retire a Milwaukee Buck. Thanks for watching. It's been your boy, Weekly Flow, and see you again next time. Peace.